President Obama will address the nation about the crisis in Syria at 9 o'clock tonight. And joining us live right now to talk about the president's address and the ongoing crisis is Dr. Fred Pearson, professor of political science and director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies at Wayne State University. Thank you so much, Dr. Pearson, for joining us tonight.
Good to be here.
So what do you make of the latest developments all over the news today with President Assad, Syria's president, saying that he might back down from the chemical weapons attacks and Russia's proposal for him to disclose where the chemical weapons are?
Well, it shows you in a way what can happen when the U.S. and Russia actually cooperate on something, which is good. Brewing since the G20 talks last week, I think sort of a deal is in the works between President Putin, President Obama. President Obama has made it pretty clear, maybe pulled the Russians' coat a little bit, that, you know, the U.S. is planning military action if nothing can come of diplomacy. And I think the Russians, for all intents and purposes, don't want that to happen. Probably Assad doesn't want it to happen either.
But can he be trusted at
Well,
this point?
that's a big question, and Secretary Kerry has made it clear that the U.S. wants a who, what, when, where kind of specification. Where are these weapons going to go? When is it going to be done? How do we enforce it? How do we verify it? I think they'll be careful with that, and we've had a kind of a negative experience in the past with Iran on this question. Russia has offered to take Iranian nuclear material. Never worked out. The Iranians never agreed to it.
And tell me this, if President Assad were to use chemical weapons again against his people, then what?
Well, I think that all bets would be off, but I don't think he's going to do that. I think that there is clear indication that there maybe come to the conclusion they're more trouble than they're worth. Tragic trouble, indeed. But that maybe it's finally gotten through to him that he needs to win his civil war some other way, if possible.
Why do you think so many Americans, no matter what poll you look at, are so against any military action in Syria? I mean, you see children dying in the streets, and yet Americans are still like, no, no, no.
Well, partly it's a suspicion of being burned in a way of these long wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that seemed endless, that went on deeper and deeper. There's always a danger, even though you start with no intention of putting troops in, which the president has, that you get sucked in a bit. You know, what happens if Hezbollah attacks an American ship with a missile? Do you get to start bombing Hezbollah, which is a party from Lebanon into Syria? What happens if the Russians show up? What happens if Iran plays a role in it? They're unpredictables, and maybe the Americans are a little worried about that. Also the sense, I think, in some circles that generally parts of Congress oppose almost anything the president proposes.
Yeah, a lot.
And that has a public rebounding, too.
One last question. You know the president is going to address the nation tonight at 9 o'clock. How does he change his message? What will he say to the American people? What do you think?
Well, I think he'll add a proviso that things are in the works, that we may be able to find a diplomatic solution, but he still wants Congress to pass some kind of a statement that he would think would add to our credibility in negotiations with the Russians that we mean business. And so probably from his point of view, he wants Congress to be behind him on
Can't just be lip service, right?
Yeah, either way, for the Russians or the Americans.
Well, of course, he's going to speak tonight, so we'll have to wait and see what he has to say. Thank you so much, Dr. Pearson.
Thank you.
For joining us tonight and giving us your expertise. And a reminder, you can watch President Obama's address tonight at 9 o'clock right here on Channel 7. We'll also be streaming the speech on our website, WXYZ.com.